Alright, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and today I started to make a regular sort of presentation and then I got distracted by a rabbit hole. So strap in, I'm going to take you down this rabbit hole, okay? Hopefully you'll enjoy this. It's been a while since we've done a rabbit hole type style video, so let's get into it. Yesterday I said, I wonder how long before it comes out that the WEF used this kid being SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried, okay, as a front man to wreck an entire industry so they could come back in and buy it up for cents on the dollar and control a huge chunk of it. Then I sort of said, okay, I'll take my tinfoil hat off, because admittedly this did sound like, I wouldn't be surprised. That was what I was getting at. I have no evidence of this, but I just wouldn't be surprised. Anyway, this was posted yesterday. Fast forward to today, it's taken exactly 1 day before this thing seems to be unfolding right before my very eyes. Perhaps I indeed spoke it into existence. Just to make sure, if you're not familiar with the FTX saga, or if you need a recap, I'm just going to spend 30 seconds catching everyone up, okay? This is SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried. He is the CEO of the FTX exchange. The FTX exchange was, until a couple of days ago, one of the largest exchanges, cryptocurrency exchanges on the planet. However, they currently have blown up, they are bankrupt, and they are in a hole for $9.4 billion. SBF has been involved with a whole heap of strange things. He has ties to the WEF. We'll get to those later on. Here he is pictured with Bill Clinton and Tony Blair. You can make your own mind up about that. Something else just before we go down this rabbit hole that you need to understand is there is a research company, Alameda Research, who work in partnership with FTX, okay, or used to work before they went bankrupt. Alameda Research is a leading principal trading firm, and Caroline Ellison is the CEO. So if you don't know who Caroline Ellison is, I've got a 30-second clip here, which I hope you're going to enjoy this one.
Pull it off without my math degree. Use very little math. Use a lot of elementary school math. Being comfortable with risk is very important. We tend not to have things like stop losses. I think those aren't necessarily a great risk management tool. I'm trying to think of a good example of a trade where I've lost a ton of money. Well, I don't know. I probably don't want to go into specifics too much with that.
So, yeah, I guess the signs were there all along, as they so often are. Let's keep going. So what really happened? Well, in a nutshell, and it is more complicated than this, but FTX created an exchange token, FTT. Nothing out of the ordinary there. Okay, Binance has done the same with their token BNB. FTX then gave a bunch of this FTT token to Alameda Research, and they happened to use it as collateral for loans. And then the FTT token price fell off a cliff from $23, $24, $25 all the way down to about $2. When this happened, they of course no longer had any collateral left backing their loans, and this is one of the contributing factors to their almost $10 billion hole that they created through their chicanery and incompetence. Who'd have thought stop losses are not to be laughed at after all? But is it really possible? Is it really possible that this whole thing could have been orchestrated by the WEF? Okay, is it possible that the reason they did do this was they knew they were going to destroy it? They knew they were going to do this in order to force the regulators to come in and heavily regulate this industry and buy it all up for pennies on the dollar. Is this really a possibility? Well, first of all, shout out to my boy Goldank here. He has put me onto this rabbit hole, and I very much enjoyed it this morning, so this is why we're going to share it and go through it today. Let's get into it. Did you know that Alameda Research CEO Caroline, her father, Glenn Ellison, is the department head of economics at MIT? And prior to getting appointed to the SEC, Gary Gensler, this man here, was a professor of global economics and management at MIT. So Caroline's father and Gary Gensler both used to work at MIT. It also looks like Goldman Sachs had their hand in the cookie jar as well. Here's a photo of the Alameda CEO Caroline's dad, Glenn Ellison, with Gregory Palm, who's the former top Goldman Sachs lawyer, one of the wealthiest corporate lawyers in the US. Here you can see FTX and Goldman Sachs, two major strands involved out of their discussion, one where Goldman would help FTX get regulatory approval. So immediately I'm starting to wonder, was all of this orchestrated to bring in regulation so that the regulators had a very easy job of saying, look, we cannot allow for this to happen. We need more stringent regulations. SBF's father may have also had a role. Joseph Bankman is a Stanford professor and the dad of SBX, and is cited a lot in this 2018 document, Tax Compliance in a Decentralizing Economy. Sam Bankman-Fried's mother is also a professor at Stanford and a bundler for the Democratic Party campaign contributions. FTX launched 13 days after Biden announced the campaign. This is impeccable timing for the rise of FTX. just in time to be the second largest donor to the current president of the United States. So SBF was an MIT grad where Caroline's dad worked, and Caroline was a Stanford grad where SBF's mum and dad worked. There's some more information here on this whole Mind the Gap bundler operation founded by SBF's mother and led by the Stanford facility, funneling millions of dollars from Silicon Valley into the Democrat Party. Mind the Gap, a network formed less than 2 years ago, has been quietly routing millions of dollars to Democratic candidates and groups across the country in 2018 and the 2020 election cycles, emerging as a new power center in the Silicon Valley political scene. It's just that so far it has avoided public detection. Another shady piece of the FTX pie is they have this thing called Oxy token. Oxy went down from $4 to 3 cents since its inception, as you can see here. What's even stranger about this is the core team consists of big banks like Goldman Sachs, Barclays, JP Morgan, Bank of America, and of course FTX and Alameda. Getting back to the connections, SBF's brother, also a former Jane Street trader, is founder of Guarding Against Pandemics. He was a legislative correspondent for the US House of Representatives and an advisor to large political donors in the Democrat Party. And here is where it starts to get very interesting. SBF's auntie has been Dean of Columbia School for Public Health since 2008, and she created the first ever US college program focused on climate and health. She also happens to be a member of the WEF's Global Agenda Council on Aging. Here she is, as you can see, WEF, everyone's favorite 3-letter organization. And you can pause your screen here if you want to read this. I'm not going to play you this clip, but there's a video here if you want to watch it of Joseph Bankman lobbying at the US House Government Reform and Oversight Committee's panel regarding hedge fund regulation in 2008. So you can see these ties are all over the place, and look at this, it keeps getting deeper because the head of ventures and commercial at FTX Ventures began her career as an analyst for the Clinton Foundation, which explains this photo at the start right here. So you can see that this is all very, very overlapping. FTX's director of engineering recently donated $1.1 million to the political campaign in Vermont, as well as $500K to the Democratic Party of Oregon. Singer spent close to $8 million on pro-Democrat campaign contributions. So you can see here that this is all very, very politically motivated. It's all very deep ties to the WEF and to politics. The former co-CEO of Alameda left the CEO position just over 2 months ago. The MIT grad, again MIT, now spends his time traveling the world and enjoying his new boat. Excellent timing. And of course we can't forget this guy Mark. Okay, Mark became the CFTC commissioner in 2011, working alongside Gary Gensler from the SEC. In 2013, Mark became acting CFTC chairman upon Gary's departure. He was later hired by FTX US as head of policy and regulation. Incredibly convenient indeed. Then in this CNBC article from earlier in the year, SBF says he could spend upwards of $1 billion on the 2024 election. It's looking more and more likely that serious money laundering was going on, sending dollars from FTX to Democrats under the guise of altruism. So as you can see, this rabbit hole goes deeper and deeper and deeper. One of the biggest cryptocurrency exchanges on the planet clearly has deep, deep, deep ties to politics, clearly has deep, deep, deep ties to the WEF. An awful lot of money under the guise of trying to do well for the space, under the guise of altruism and philanthropy, has been funneled from FTX, a now insolvent and bankrupt exchange, to the government and to these organizations that do not want a decentralized or free future. Remember, the WEF is championing this. You'll own nothing and be happy. This is direct from them. And so I'd like to go full circle and leave this one for you to decide. Do you think it's possible that the WEF used this kid as a front man to wreck an entire industry so they could buy it up for cents on the dollar and control a huge chunk of it? Do I even need a tinfoil hat for this type of thinking anymore? Was this happening in plain sight all along? Lastly, does this get fixed in the short term? Is this an easy fix? Do we just see a big entity like BlackRock come and buy up FTX, reimburse the customers, and does this show continue? Of course, after heavier regulations for the crypto exchange industry? Or is this going to be a long and drawn out process? Have we only just started to scratch the surface of this? Are more liquidation cascades coming? Is further downside in the crypto market and more pain needed to be felt before we can get a resolution? Is this going to end up being long and drawn out over multiple months? This is indeed a developing story, and I will continue to update on this as and when. If you found value here today, I'd appreciate it if you could drop a like on the channel. Subscribe if you're not already. Turn the notifications on if you want to get up-to-date notifications for when I change and modify my trading positions. If you want to see any of the technicals, you can go back and watch yesterday's video. I put 2 out yesterday, and nothing much has changed since then. Everything I said in those prior 2 videos is still valid today. I will be putting out more content over the weekend and doing a chart update examining the closes for today. In the meantime, look after yourselves, enjoy your weekend, take care from me, all the best, cheers, bye.